Welcome everyone to CG's 145th seminar, and of course now in webinar format. And today we have a very practical topic, the topic of the effects of the pandemic on recruitment of international students, especially from China, and the role of agents in that process, and what agents are saying about the kind of advice they give to students from China who are thinking of going abroad, including going abroad to the UK. So we have a very practical topic. If you're in the UK, this is a matter of survival, this topic. The flow of international students from China is a material factor in the bottom line position of institutions. Now for CG as an academic research centre to be so practical, this goes a little bit against the grain, doesn't it? So, you know, for those who are high-minded and believe that researchers and universities should be talking about pure ideas without any application to the practical world, you will have to close your ears and eyes at the points when our presenters tell you something really useful that you really need to know, which they are going to do. Ying and Jenna Mittelmeier from the from Manchester Institute of Education, which is at the University of Manchester. I should just say that they are two of a team of 4, and the other two are Dr. Miguel Lim and Dr. Sylvie Lomer, and they are available online as well to enter the question and answer part of our session. I'll introduce the speakers in a moment, but let me take you through the web protocols as we always do. So please note that the webinar today will be recorded and will be available on the CG website within 48 hours or so. We'll also have the chat from today's webinar on the website too. Please keep yourself muted during the webinar unless you've been asked to speak or you get to the point where you're asking a question. There's no need for you to have your video on during the webinar, but please turn it on when you're asking a question. It's more fun if everyone can see you. We recommend using speaker view so you can more clearly see who is talking at a given moment. Difficult to bring up all of the participants on screen at once, so speaker view is probably the most practical option. To ask a question, use the chat function. Now, we've adopted this as our method now, that you put your question in the chat and then we can select you out in the Q&A session. So specify your question, spell it out so we know what you want to know. When we get to the Q&A stage, you may be invited, I hope you will be invited to ask your question directly. I'll try and warn you from the chair when we're about to ask you. When you're invited to ask the question, please unmute yourself, most important step, switch on your video, and then you state your name and where you are from. Now, no one ever remembers to do the last one, so try and remember, state your name and where you are from, because that always adds something for everyone else. So I'm happy now to pass over to our speakers. Now, our first speaker is Ying. Ying is a doctoral researcher at the Manchester Institute of Education, and her doctoral research is looking at the role of education agents in the marketisation of British postgraduate tour programs in China's market. At this point, let me hand over to Ying, and I think Ying will, during the webinar, hand over to Jenna Mittelmeier. So I might quickly introduce Jenna as well. She's a lecturer in international education at the Manchester Institute of Education at the University of Manchester. So our two presenters will swap back and forth, and at the end of half an hour or so, we'll then move to the Q&A. Okay, over to you, Ying.
Thank you, Simon. Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to our section. I'm Ying, a PhD researcher in education from the University of Manchester. Today, my colleague, Dr. Jenna Mittelmeier, and I are going to talk to you about our report, Chinese International Students Recruitment During the COVID-19 Crisis, Education Agents Practices and Reflections. And our other authors, Dr. Miguel Lim and Dr. Sylvie Lomer, may join in during Q&A or in the chat. Jenna?
Hi everyone. So my name is Jenna Mittelmeier, if I can get the screen working. There we go. And as Ying said, I'm a lecturer in international education at the University of Manchester. The research that Ying and I are going to be talking about today is available as a full report on our website. So the link is on the slide here, and my colleague Miguel, if you wouldn't mind adding that to the chat for everyone when you get a moment as well. We'll be doing kind of a whistle-stop tour today of what we think are the most important findings from this report. But if you'd like more details or you want to hear more, then we would recommend taking a look at the full report as well. So the report was published by here at Manchester, and that's our higher education research network at the University of Manchester. So I did just want to take a quick second to plug this network, as there's a wide range of experts in higher education at our university, particularly in the area of internationalization of higher education. So we published this report about 2 weeks ago, and it was really quickly picked up by the media because I think this is probably a hot topic on everyone's minds in higher education at the moment, particularly here in the UK. We wrote a short editorial of the main points for University World News, but then also the BBC reported on our work with kind of this scary title, COVID Fears Putting Off Chinese Students from the UK. And while I think that title definitely grabs attention, we felt that the story is a little bit more complex than that. So we're really happy to be here today to talk about this work in a little bit more detail. So back to Ying.
Yeah. In terms of education agents, it sounds more like a black box for lots of people in the UK. People don't tend to know anything about agents. It seems there are lots of misconceptions or myths around agents. So today, let's uncover this box together. In our research, education agents refer to organizations and or individuals who provide a range of educational services in exchange for a fee from their service users, including overseas higher education institutions and our students who will study or are studying abroad. Indeed, individual agents or agencies organize their work by dividing the labor into two key roles, communicators and processors. Communicators are mainly responsible for promoting overseas universities and offering consultation services to potential applicants, along with communicating with students who have signed agreements with agencies. By contrast, processors are responsible for assembling documents, submitting applications, and monitoring application progress. In lots of cases, based on business needs and the size of agency, the work of these two roles may partly overlap. Next slide, please. Well, education agents are often referred to in the UK as a kind of a single role, but actually education agents take different roles within their own organizations. Based on different business models, there are two main types, including business to clients models and combined models containing business to business and business to clients services. Business to clients means education agents provide services directly to applicants and overseas universities. Business to business means education agents provide services to other agencies. These services mainly include submitting applications to overseas universities. As overseas universities are unlikely to build partnerships with every agent or agency and only pay commissions to a select number of key agencies, some education agents may rely on the connections with other agencies who have built partnerships with overseas universities to submit applications on their behalf, with the intention to receive shared commissions. Next slide, please. In terms of business scales, education agents can be categorized into three types: large enterprises, smaller companies, and sole traders. Large enterprises include corporations, which may have multiple locations or branches termed multi-site here, or single site. These organizations generally have systematic work processes with large and experienced working teams. These organizations many apply the combined model, including business to business and business to clients. Small companies usually consist of several employees. They deal with a smaller number of students' cases and heavily relied on word of mouth for new clients. These companies many apply the model of business to clients. And sole traders, as the name indicates, are a single agent who handles all the services independently. This usually means accepting a very limited students' cases and heavily depending on word of mouth for new businesses. Along with small companies, sole traders many apply the model of business to clients. Next slide, please. Education agents tend to provide a one-stop shop for overseas education services, which can be categorized into 5 main aspects. First, a full-range information provision regarding countries, cities, institutions, cost, food, application documents, language courses, accommodations, and get in touch with university representatives and so forth. Second, advising services on selecting countries, institutions, and/or programs. Third, assisting with applications, including personal essays, references, certificates, filling application forms, submitting applications, and checking application status. The fourth, visa processing services, consisting of translating required documents, interviewing training, filling visa application forms, and making visa appointments. The last one is about pre-arrival services, such as pre-departure training, alumni connections, pick-up or drop-off services, accommodation application, and deposit payment. Apart from those services, many around admissions, indeed, education agents in China are keeping exploring and optimizing their services in other respects, such as success and graduate outcomes, where I'd like to explore more in my future research. So please watch out for my future research. Next slide, please. Currently, lots of research associated with internationalization or international recruitment completely forgot the role of education agents. But actually, education agents are super important. While there's no systematically compiled data about how many students in China use agents, the recent literature points to their importance. Moreover, University UK 2016 reports education agents have become the most important influence over Chinese students' choice of postgraduate taught programs in the UK. Thus, the role of education agents can't be overlooked in the recruitment of Chinese international students. In this sense, agents' reflections on their work and their applicants' concerns during COVID-19 crisis could provide very informative insights into students' decision-making. Next, please. In our research, we look at the 2 questions: how did current and prospective Chinese international students interact with their education agents during COVID-19 crisis? The second question is about what were education agents doing during COVID-19 crisis? Next slide, please. Yeah, between May 1st to May 15th, the research was conducted by means of online interviews and open-ended questionnaires. And in the end, 19 agent consultants participated in this research, including 14 communicators and 5 processors. They were from 16 different education agencies located in 9 cities across China. The interview was conducted in Chinese, lasting for around 1.5 hours each. The answers received via email were simple, relatively simple, with responses consisting of only a few words in general. And the data was then analyzed roughly based on the themes of interviewing questions. And finally, 5 aspects of initial findings of immediate relevance for UK universities were identified. Yeah, please, next slide, please. In terms of findings, first of all, I'd like to talk about agents' timelines during COVID-19. As I said at the beginning, based on different work divisions, education agents have 2 key roles, processors and communicators. From figure 6, it's clear to show that communicators and processors have very different business cycles in 2018. From processors perspective, the volume of consultation from potential applicants for UK programs starting in autumn 2019 usually swells from January, peaking in around June to August, and then gradually declines until the end of the year. By contrast, from the processor's perspective, the overall trend of work volume, like preparing documents, submitting applications, typically increases steadily from the start of the year. However, as a result of COVID-19 crisis, from February to May 2020, the business cycle of education agents in China was completely disrupted. Both communicators and processors reflected that the volume of inquiries from in-service students who have signed agreement with agencies has increased significantly compared to the same period in previous years. One reason to this could be the overwhelming uncertainties in application process that emerge as a result of a COVID-19 crisis. And moreover, communicators reflected under usual circumstances in the spring, communicators should turn their attention to the next application season and new sources of potential applicants, rather than stagnating in the work of in-service students. However, as a result of COVID-19 crisis, the number of new visits or inquiries about the 2021 to 2022 academic year for the majority of education agencies drop off or even fell to 0 in a single month. Here, it really indicates that the recruitment for the academic year 2021 to 2022 will be impacted significantly in addition to the current recruitment cycle. Next slide, please. As agents reflected during COVID-19 crisis, they were mainly busy dealing with students, the issues of 3 groups of students. 1, current students who were already studying in the UK, prospective students applying for UK programs starting in autumn 2020, and prospective students applied for UK programs starting in spring 2020. For the current students, the primary concerns involve whether to return to China, arranging return airfare to China, how to apply for suspension of their studies in the UK, and how their parents could mail face masks to them. Such questions were reflected to be more common from students in foundation year or undergraduate courses. For future students who were applying for undergraduate for UK programs starting in autumn 2020, based on their application status, there are 4 subgroups. 1, students who had already received unconditional offers, and 2, students who had received conditional offers but could not apply for pre-sectional courses, and 3rd, students who had received conditional offers and applied for pre-sectional courses, and 4th, students who were waiting for the application results. Their common concerns were about the format of courses in the upcoming academic year, tuition fees, visa application, English language test, pre-sectional language courses. For the students applying for UK programs starting in the spring 2020, their frequent questions contained whether to continue to pursue the programs, the format of upcoming courses, visa application, as well as tuition fees. Next slide, please. Confronted with such a great number of inquiries, education agents in China seriously needed timely and reliable information about UK universities' teaching and learning adjustments and UK government's measures for containing the pandemic. In order to resolve their clients' concerns. The sources of their information mainly came from the representative of UK universities, their internal working groups, as well as universities' websites and official accounts on social media platforms. Here, I'd like to make some explanations on the sources from representative of UK universities and their internal working groups at agencies. During COVID-19 crisis, as agents reflected, information provided by representatives became the most important source of information. As any teaching and learning adjustments were made, the representative would forward the updates to liaison department of agencies, with synthesizing different information from different universities and them making their own brief reports. Education agencies will circulate the original documents of UK universities and their own brief reports to sub-agencies or branches. In this way, agent consultants could be able to assess those updates in a timely manner. Moreover, generally, education agents have their internal working groups where agent consultants share individual students' cases, corresponding replies of admission officers, and the final solutions and results. As agent reflected, during COVID-19 crisis, the information shared with the internal working groups really helped them to solve individual students' cases. Yeah, hand over to Jenna.
Thanks, Ying. So unlike the BBC headline that I shared earlier, one of the findings that we actually had was that agents believed that the majority of the Chinese students that they worked with who held offers to UK institutions did still intend to study abroad as planned. And of course, this data was collected in mid-May, so there could be lots of changes since that point. And I think that it's really impossible to make exact predictions at this stage, particularly as this is such a really fast-moving environment, and there have been nearly constant developments in the global health and political landscapes, even since last week or just yesterday. However, I do just think it's worth noting that within our findings that it suggested that the majority of Chinese students that agents worked with were still open to continuing their plans in the UK, which is in line with some other studies that have been produced, such as by the British Council. But the caveat to that was that there was caution about the containment of the virus and the pandemic system, or the pandemic situation within the UK. And we stay cautious because there were a number of important concerns around safety that were expressed to agents by students and by their parents as well. And I mean that in terms, firstly, of health safety, as many of the students that agents worked with expressed concerns about things such as herd immunity, reports of the UK public not wearing face masks, or not socially distancing. But also, we mean that in the terms of personal safety, as there were a number of reports that circulated around Chinese social media about issues related to racism and hate crimes towards people of Chinese or East Asian descent in the UK, including reported attacks on Chinese international students in several UK cities that was directly linked to COVID or related to wearing face masks. Another finding was about students and agents' desires to hold open and reciprocal communication both during and after the crisis with their UK institutions. So in particular, I think what we found was that students wanted to feel that their voices and their opinions could be heard by their institutions and would be considered in the development of plans for their individual programs moving forward for the academic year. So for example, many of the agents noted that some universities in the UK or some programs in the UK were holding things like offer holder days, or they sent electronic surveys to ask students' perspectives about their intended plans. And it was these kind of smaller actions that led students to feel cared for or supported by their future institutions, and also made agents feel more favorably towards these institutions. And it was that sort of feeling of trust that continued to play an important role in the decision-making process. And finally, there were a number of concerns about intentions for classes to be fully online in the upcoming semester or for the next upcoming academic year. And these concerns, they weren't necessarily about the quality of education or about whether their learning experience would be equitable, even though I think that's probably what a lot of our institutions are focusing on in our external communications with students. But students were concerned more about the broad or holistic student experience throughout the year. So many of the students that agents worked with, they talked about wanting to study in the UK as a chance to immerse themselves in a new culture, to make intercultural connections in a face-to-face setting, and to use this as an opportunity to travel and to see the world and to see the UK as a destination. And so this shift to online left many Chinese offer holders questioning whether that experience as a whole would be equitable in addition to the educational experience, particularly considering that it may not be possible or even necessary for students to be physically present within the UK this year or in this upcoming semester. So what suggestions do agents have for UK universities? First, agents stressed the importance of holding open and reciprocal communication with both agents and students. So they wanted to see universities allowing students' perspectives and their ideas to be seen both at a university-wide level and at an individual program level, such as things through surveys or offer holder events or using social media group for offer holders. And second, they talked about the need for explicit plans to be announced about the upcoming academic year. And I think that a lot of work has been done in this area since this research was conducted in May, but there are still a lot of uncertainties at most of our universities about how the next year will look and what services are available and what is going to be open on campus and how our education is going to look. And it was those uncertainties and those ambiguities that were making offer holders question their intentions to go abroad or their intentions to go abroad this year. Related to that, agents discussed that offer holders' real preference was to be in the UK and to have that full international experience abroad. So they suggested that students were very receptive to delayed or flexible start dates, particularly if this meant that more campus services could be open and if it meant that they could be physically present in the UK and in a safe environment. Further, agents suggested that online courses would be seen by students as inferior. And again, not necessarily educationally, but in terms of that holistic international experience abroad. And so agents felt that while for many of the students that they worked with, the concern was not necessarily about the money, but they felt that students would feel that the value of the degree would be diminished or seen as less value for money if the campus-based component was removed from the equation. And so they suggested that offer holders would likely appreciate even a modest reduction just in gesture of their tuition fees to reflect that change in the experience. Alongside that, the agents talked about a need for universities to think about not just the educational elements of the upcoming semester or the upcoming year, although of course that's a big ask as many of us are scrambling at the moment to get plans in place for the upcoming year. But they also just talked about the need for, or the desire from students to continue to have that social and cultural learning experience and question about how that could be built into online environments. So again, thinking about that holistic student experience, not just the educational experience. The agents also stressed that concerns around recruitment of international students, Chinese international students in particular, is not just a problem for the immediate academic year, but that this is a more longer term issue that we need to be grappling with. So I think this is particularly apparent in the decline in agency recruitment for potential applicants for the 2021-22 academic year that Ying mentioned. So therefore, the agents stressed that universities and programs need to be looking more to the future and beyond just this immediate crisis of this upcoming academic year. Now, to achieve that, agents showed in our study a real interest in developing their connections with UK universities and to work in partnership with UK universities. And they found that there was a variation in the degree to which universities were open to those relationships. And if I can stray off of the practicality, as Simon said, I think from the perspective of UK universities, there's quite a number of ethical considerations within that relationship. When we think about things like the marketization of higher education, questions about equity and privilege of accessing an education abroad, and of course the increased concerns about the over-reliance of Chinese international student fees. So what I would say is there's probably a need for UK universities to start to think critically and more explicitly about how they would like to see those relationships develop in the future. I'll hand back to Ying.
You. As our report is consistent with the related large-scale survey results conducted by British Council and Association of British Chinese professors, it really indicates that education agents would efficiently anticipate Chinese international students' perspectives regarding study abroad. And education agents have been getting involved actively and deeply in students' decision-making about study abroad. So it's of great value to look at the role of education agents in Chinese international students' decision-making process, as well as the recruitment of international students for overseas universities. Yeah, Jenna.
So the final thing that I'll say is that if you find this topic interesting, or if you're doing research in this area, we do at the University of Manchester hold an annual conference entitled China and Higher Education that looks at higher education both in China as well as China's educational mobility internationally. So thinking about international students and international scholars. This year, the theme is navigating uncertain futures, which I think relates nicely to some of the things we've been talking about today. And we've decided to move the conference online this year during the week of December 7th. So the conference is free to attend. It'll take place flexibly throughout that week. So we're thinking we'll have just a few hours a day where you can kind of dip in and out as you're interested. We have a really fabulous list of keynote speakers, names that are probably very familiar to CGHE. And we will also be doing a writing workshop for early career researchers. We're still accepting abstracts, so if you are doing work in this area and would like to submit, September 7th is the deadline. There's a link on the screen, and if my colleague Miguel hasn't already, I'll have him add it to the chat that gives the full details about the conference theme and the abstracts and how to register.
Yeah, again, it's just a quick introduction to our research. We really suggest if you are interested in more, you could take a look at our report. Our formal report is online. Miguel put it in the chat again if you miss it. Yeah, thank you for your attention. And Jenna and I are very happy to take your question now.
Well, thank you very much, Ying and Jenna. That was a really effective presentation, very informative, very good data, very clear. And the December conference looks great, looks really worth attending, or worth online attending at least. I'm going to ask you the first question. I'll be followed by Morten and Susanna and Sarah and Heather. My question goes to the ethical issues that brought up towards the end. I mean, this isn't just a market. We're not just talking about the bottom line of institutions and survival. We're not just talking about the business. And we're not just talking about education. We're talking about people's lives, about their health and their lives. And I'm asking you this question as experts on international education, people who understand what's going on, probably are closer to it than the Minister of Education right now. I mean, looking ahead to September, October, when UK reopens again, in your view, is face-to-face higher education in the UK likely to be safe? And that's the first question. It's the direct question. Is it likely, in your view, to be safe? And my second question is, if a parent asked you that question, what would you say?
Great question. Ying, would you like me to start with that?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, this is my personal opinion, not my institution's.
I understand. I have the same disclaimer.
I think face-to-face teaching in September is not safe. Absolutely not.
My view too.
When I think about my personal teaching practice, I teach 350 students. We can't put all of us together in a lecture hall safely. It's not something I want as a lecturer, and it's not something that I would want for my students. And I think that's a real concern for lots of lecturers and lots of students around the world at the moment. Now, if a parent asked me that question, I have been reflecting a lot lately about the ethical tensions of wanting to keep my job and wanting to keep our universities and our programs going. And we have lots of communications with students all the time, where I think we do have to think and be honest about our experiences and our concerns about the upcoming year. And if a parent were to ask me, I think I would have to be honest, and I would say, this is why our universities are going online, and this is why we're working incredibly hard to make this an equitable experience, and why our university has chosen not to put students in that position of forcing them into classrooms in unsafe manners.
Thank you, Jenna. I really appreciate the answer, and it's the one I would have given myself if I was asked the same question. But it's not a popular answer with some people, as you can imagine. But I think we do have to get to the bottom line, and the bottom line is about human beings, and it's not about money. Now, we've got a good call list, and I'm going to bring in Morten Hansen, who put his question in the chat first and has a good question. Morten, are you there? Hello, Morten Hansen. If Morten doesn't come in, Susanna will bring you in next. I'm going to give Morten a count of three. 3, 2, 1. No, Morten. Susanna, would you like to come in?
Sure. I'm Sazna Jaideva. I'm a research fellow at the UCL Institute of Education. So first of all, I wanted to say that I thought that was a really fascinating presentation and such important research. So I was very excited to hear this. My question is, Did you get a sense from your interviews with education consultants that Chinese student mobility to study destinations other than the UK, and most likely the US, have been affected in the same ways? Or has there been a shift in interest to some other study destinations that might be viewed as having handled the pandemic better, either in Asia itself or further afield, like New Zealand, for example? So yeah, just to see if there were any interesting differences in terms of flows to different destinations. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Actually, in our research, agents really points this kind of show layer reflections really show this point, these aspects. Sorry, a little bit nervous. And as a result of COVID-19 crisis, they in view of the tension or the trend. How to say, the trend across the world, in view of the tension between US and China, and also Australians coronavirus banned Chinese students at the beginning of COVID-19 crisis. Agents feel that UK has become presently the most ideal and attractive place. Wow. For lots of Chinese international students. If UK's government could contain the pandemic well, they feel like next season more Chinese international students would choose UK as the destination to pursue their degree. They thought because UK, especially in terms of UK's master's program, is a shortened program, and it's easy to travel to other countries. And also some reflections from their peers about UK's experiences really attract them to come. So they think UK may be potentially become the most attractive place for Chinese students.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you so much, Ying.
Thank you.
And thank you both. Now we're losing questioners hand over fist here. Sarah Lee was going to be next, but she's no longer in the webinar. So I'm going to ask Heather Eggins if she wants to come in with her question at this point.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much for the presentation. Two things really. How many agents actually are there? How large is this group that you've been talking about? I know very little about agents, as I'm sure other people do, and I found it very interesting to listen to, but I have no feel for how many there are in these different groups. And then you had this very interesting slide on the different groups of students. And one of the groups were students within the UK. And I wondered if the number of contacts with agents was larger from some groups than from others. Did you find a lot of students in the UK contacting the agents during that earlier period in the year and less from other groups? It would be interesting to know. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Actually, currently, there is no official body to regulate and calculate the number of education agencies in China. But if you visit China, you'll see agents across the China. It really depends on the sizes. Like I said before, large enterprises, small company, and sole traders. And in terms of the group of students, which group of students approach agents most? Based on our research, actually students who were applying for UK programs starting in autumn 2020, this group of students are the most, their inquiry, as they reflected, they received most inquiries from this group of students because there are lots of uncertainties in applications for the autumn 2020 academic year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. We'll make one more attempt to bring in Morten. Morten Hansen, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. I had a question regarding the payment that universities are doing to the agents. So can you talk a little bit about how does it work? How do universities pay agents for students? And if you have any data on it, has those payments changed as a result of COVID-19?
Well, thank you for your question. Actually, I don't have very exact information about at this point, but based on the literature I read, actually, lots of UK universities paid commissions about 10 to 15% of tuition fees of each successful enrollment to education agencies. Whether this kind of commissions change, to be honest, currently I have no idea. Yeah.
Thanks for the answer. Ava Hardin, would you like to come in at this point?
Hi, really great presentation. I don't know if your research goes into this, but with fewer students working with education agents this year, are more Chinese students looking to take a gap year or just do online?
Sorry, would you mind repeating your question? Sorry.
Yeah, so I was wondering, are more Chinese students looking to take a gap year and just reapply for the 2021 fall semester, or are they just looking to do online school this year because less are working with education students or agents? Yeah.
Thank you. Actually, what I did when the research was conducted between May 1st and May 15th. During that period, agents reflected most their students have not made the final decision. Most of them were considering about lots of issues such as the format of courses in the upcoming academic year and the tuition fees, whether universities would adjust the tuition fees if the courses were conducted online. And agents feel if universities could not provide explicit plans for the upcoming academic year, parents and students could not make the final decision. So, so in our research, actually, we didn't have very clear answer about whether students will come or not, but we really indicate some useful information, like students emphasizing the importance of physical experience abroad and the value of such as a 1-year master's program. It really needs physical experiences and get in touch different people, something like this. So if they fully, conduct it online, agents feel maybe less students will choose to pursue the programs as planned.
I've got four more questions. David Law is the next. Hello, David.
Hi, good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you for an excellent presentation. My question is around comparisons between People's Republic and other source countries for the UK. Obviously, the whole world is going through a pandemic crisis, and all countries will be affected by that. In comparison, say, with India, would you say that the percentage recruitment via agents to UK campuses is higher or lower? Because we know that India is very agent dependent. And a supplementary and related issue in some markets, agents will be very closely related to UK universities and won't recruit to other countries. But in China, I have the impression that certainly for the large agencies, that is not so, that the agents will be influential and they may well, in the way in which they counsel students, be able to advise students on whether it might be better or worse to go to the UK compared to, say, going to New Zealand, where there was a very low rate of infection through the virus.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your question. Actually, based in the interview with agent consultants, they've said normally potential clients visit agents for the first time who visit agents for the first time inquired about very general questions like which country would be better to get an overseas degree and the value of the degree. And agents will generally introduce the information of different countries and say different advantages of each countries. These countries including the top, I would say, the popular host countries for Chinese students group. And then students would make comparisons or talk with their parents, then go back to agencies again to ask further information. And some agent consultants, they are responsible for specific countries' business. So they emphasize certain advantages of certain countries. Then maybe during that period, students will be influenced by those information and made a decision, okay, this country may be better and I just try. Yeah, but based on their reflections, students' minds always change, which often are influenced by their peers, relatives, or the situations such as pandemic, such as political issues, and so on. Yeah.
Thanks, Ying. Zachary Spire.
Good morning, colleagues. This is Zach. I'm chiming in from California. I am a lone wolf researcher at the moment. But my question, first, my thanks for such an interesting and engaging presentation. And my question goes to the tension, Ying, you raise around communication and context. Specifically, if you, in your discussions with agents, have had any debate over the so-called, quote, enforceability of things like a contract for housing, or if a student agrees to join a course and the course is stopped in the mode they've been provided, meaning they go from face-to-face to online or from online to face-to-face. Has anybody debated the way that that would be done, or how, the kind of influence that might have on their perception of the value of going abroad or remaining until the water is more still? Thank you.
Well, based on our based on agents' reflections, it's found that agent consultants did not provide or offer very explicit suggestions on whether students should pursue the program as planned. They just delivered information to students. And it's really up to students' minds whether they think it's right time to go or not. Because they think if they provide this kind of oriented information, if in the future something happens, their clients will go back to agencies to make lots of complaints. For their long-term benefits, it's a wrong behavior. They should care about more in the future. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ying. And our next question is from Jia Liu. Jia, are you there?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Hi, I'm Jay Liu from UCL Institute of Education. Thank you very much for the talk, which is very interesting. So my question is about the bridge established by the educational agent between a university and a Chinese applicant. So are there any measures in place to ensure that the agent really manipulate those recruiting criteria very well to assure that the student they recruit really meet up the expectation? So similarly, on the other hand, from the perspective of a student, how would they be satisfied that the program will turn out to be something which is preached by the agent, which is exactly as what has been told? Do you have any data in relation to this, please? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Actually, our current research did not look at that aspect. Agents mentioned something about that. They said currently, most of them just introduce, because they have a big data set, including previous students' cases, about successful cases and failed cases. So they really show something like what kind of backgrounds can meet, what kind of programs, and also agents are tracking students' progress when they are studying, when students are studying in universities. So really they can deliver this kind of information to potential clients that see the current students, what they are doing, and some graduate students, where they go, and what kind of job they do, and what kind of courses they pursue, something like that. This kind of information really helps students to understand the real things about certain programs. And then students will make some decisions in collaborations with their parents, and then just try to apply for certain programs as agents suggested.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Ying, and thanks for your excellent answers to the questions, which have really enabled us to get a lot of people in. You've been most economical in your replies. Bowen Shu is our next questioner. Bowen.
Hello, thank you for the very interesting presentation. I'm Bowen. I'm from Cambridge University. So my question is about the kind of emerging geopolitical tensions between the UK and China. And what we can see is over the past few weeks, there are kind of political disputes regarding the case of Hong Kong, and also regarding to the Chinese cell phone company, Huawei. The UK is basically what they're trying to do is they follow the US and they ban the company. So given those new and emerging tensions between the two countries, what would you say about the future of the higher education sector in the UK, and also Chinese students' future choices in terms of choosing a destination to study?
Wow, it's a very big question, actually. I would say as an international student, the international experience would be the key concern, at least for me. So how to enrich my experience, broaden my horizons, to get different kinds of knowledges is what I'm most concerned about. So my, in terms of political issues, I'm not sure whether it influence or not. At least for me, I'm more cared about knowledge and experience. And currently, friends and teachers, lecturers surrounding me are very nice to me. So I didn't feel any influence from political issues. Yeah.
It is interesting that you asked that question though, Bowen, because when Ying and I were talking about this presentation, I think we said that's probably the one question someone will definitely ask.
Yes.
But I mean, if I can just add to what Ying said, I think that international education is fundamentally always going to be linked with relationships between countries. And it's probably impossible for us to comment on exactly what is going to happen, as you know, we're not political scientists. But will it have an influence? Probably on a macro level, but as Ying said, on an individual level, it's probably not the first concern on current students or future students' considerations. But I think we also have to think about the wider global impact of these issues as well, and the tensions between the US and China are going to have a runoff effect on how many students come to the UK instead of the US, for example. So it's a complicated, I think, melting pot of lots of geopolitical issues at the moment, and it will be quite interesting to see how it all turns out.
I think a lot of us are very concerned about this, and we had a discussion yesterday about the global geopolitics of science, where Jenny Lee and others talked about these issues again from a science point of view. I mean, I do think that this is an area where what ordinary people do can make a difference. I mean, not only the desire to go abroad for an education and making that happen, and that's very important in its own way to contributing to the way the world works, but also I think those of us who are involved in higher education as scholars and researchers, we can do our very best to keep the highways open, to keep everyone talking, to further the engagement between Chinese civilization and the West, and particularly the Anglo-American civilization, which in a lot of ways is so different, you know, to Chinese civilization. And they've both got so much to learn from each other, in my view. I mean, if you wanted me to put that in a nutshell, I'd say Chinese civilization does the collective better than the West does, and the Western civilization does the individual better than the East. And there's something there to learn from both. They're not in a zero-sum trade-off. You can advance both the individual and the public good and the collective at the same, and the family at the same time. And I mean, I know in the West we've got a lot to learn from the Chinese family and from the way in which the public good and social cooperation is so effective at times like this in the pandemic. And that's true of Korea, Japan, all of the countries affected by Chinese civilization, Singapore, Taiwan, all with their low death tolls. I think we've got a lot to learn, but I think also the West has something to give as well. And so it's really, really important that we're all talking and we're all interacting and we're cooperating and we're working together on research projects and we're learning each other's languages. And Chinese students coming to the UK has played a tremendous role in building worldwide cooperation in the long term. So long may it continue, regardless of the geopolitics. We're at the end of the webinar. I'd like to sincerely thank Ying and Jenna. I thought your presentation and your handling of the questions was magnificent, really good and clear. Can we bring in Miguel Lim as for the very last word? He's also part of this project and he's been very busy in the chat during the meeting. Miguel.
Thank you so much, Simon. And thank you so much, Jenna and Ying, for presenting our research with Sylvie together across very well to the CG community and well wider. So I just wanted to, perhaps my kind of idea and my last thoughts on this in relation to some of the things that we learned from our engagement with the media. So it's interesting that Bowen's question on geopolitics, as well as other questions that we received after our report was featured in the media, revolve around questions of geopolitics and money. So many people were concerned about the financial impact and also the questions about, well, will China take over UK universities through their students? And of course, those are ongoing debates. What I think our research tried to show and tried to focus on were the concerns of individual students. And for instance, concerns about their learning experience, their educational experience, their experience of wanting to interact with other cultures. I think that's something that we were really happy to report from our research. The other thing that came out was also that, of course, the desire of students for safety, experiences of safety. And I think Simon's first question about that was very important and should be, I think, a priority above financial and perhaps geopolitical concerns. So students were concerned about their safety from the virus, but also from social violence and misunderstanding. So we have at Manchester, we also have projects going on examining experiences of violence against Chinese international students. One of the first things that we're very happy to report is that a large-scale survey that we did with the Manchester China Institute among our students showed a very, very high intolerance among British students against racism. So British students did not want any Chinese student to experience racism. And I think that's a message also that we were really heartened to hear and addresses some of the concerns of Chinese students in our report. So what I wanted to say was really to keep in mind, beyond the questions of finance and geopolitics, the experiences of the individual who all want to say, learn, and what Simon said, cooperate and learn from new cultures. And I just wanted to end on that note. Perhaps Jenna and Ying might want to wrap up themselves with something. But thank you very much for the attention and the opportunity to share our research, Simon.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Miguel. And look, thank you very much again to both presenters. I think we are a bit over time now, so I will have to close. Let me say that tomorrow we have another webinar, and it's about COVID-19 and the politics of tuition. And we've got 3 experts from different kinds of systems. One from Brian Pusser from the United States, who will talk from a market-based system. Lorraine Dearden from the UK, economist of education par excellence, who will talk about free at the point of access, but paying your tuition loan later system. And Jussi Valima from Finland, who will talk about a free system, although Finland has recently introduced fees for international students. It's still free for domestic students. So they'll be tackling the question of whether things have changed in those tuition systems or free tuition because of COVID-19 and what the future holds. So join us again tomorrow. Again, thanks to all the presenters and participants in this great research project at Manchester, and keep an eye on that Manchester conference in December. Bye for now.